This session is entitled Bringing Value to the Organization Through Enterprise Architecture. This is obviously an extremely important topic. One of the things that came up in research for this council meeting, as a lot of you were talking about 25-point reform and how to implement it, was leveraging existing investments and existing programs that you had. And one of the most obvious that really came to fruition out of my discussions with a lot of you was leveraging EA. Really taking EA and turning it into a business asset. And we're really excited to have these two great speakers with us today. We have Brett Brunk, the Chief Architect from GSA, and Doreen Cox, the Chief Architect from Customs and Border Protection. Dr. Brett Brunk is GSA's newly hired Chief Architect. In that capacity, he's been focusing on reinvigorating GSA's enterprise architecture with a focus on using strategic and business architecture to more effectively manage technology investments. Excuse me. And Doreen L. Cox is the Chief Architect at U.S. Customs and Border Protection at the Department of Homeland Security, with over 20 years of experience in enterprise architecture, program management, strategic planning, process engineering, and governance. Ms. Cox has an impressive track record for transforming the mundane into mission critical. In her current role, she is responsible for the revitalization of the DHS CBP EA to meet the standards set forth in the OMB Federal Enterprise Architecture Guidelines. Doreen is going to go ahead and start things off.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm glad y'all could make it today. I'm going to talk to you about what we've done within the Customs and Border Protection to basically revitalize the EA program and to bring it to the forefront with our business owners. I'm going to talk to you about the in-state vision, value and changes, opportunities, and what work has been done and what has worked at CBP. This is a really large vision statement. It's to be recognized as an essential partner for CBP modernization by helping CBP translate business needs into high-performing, flexible, and integrated business solutions by leveraging the enterprise business architecture, common services, data uniformity, and technology standards. But again, it's a big vision, and it can be very tough to implement because we get the following questions. Who recognizes how essential EA is? How does EA become essential within an organization? Where are the business needs discovered? How are the business needs discovered? Etc. This fiscal year and in upcoming fiscal years, CBP is going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars in its fiscal year budget. And with that, all the budget reductions, budget constraints, we have to deliver value by collecting and analyzing information to identify opportunities, to cut costs and improve efficiencies through consolidation and reuse, improved information sharing, and optimized service delivery. When I talk about consolidation and reuse, improved information sharing, and optimized service delivery, that's with people, processes, and tools, not just tools. EA offers values, but there are challenges. Ingrained processes, change resistance, governance resistance, lack of understanding EA value proposition. That is changing in CBP. The business owners do recognize the value of enterprise architecture and what we're trying to do when we talk to them about building out our lines of business and our business architecture. It's also difficult to measure EA value. There are opportunities. Executives need useful information to make informed decisions. Business owners want funding, and projects want to do well on the acquisition architecture reviews. That's one of the things I've done within my program, which I'll speak to later on, is I have teamed and partnered with the acquisition group so that when they're doing their acquisition reviews, we're actually doing our architecture reviews before them to ensure that the programs and projects are in architectural alignment with what we're doing. The following techniques have worked at CBP: process integration, enterprise architecture services, EA certification memos, executive board sponsorship, EA framework for structured analysis, embedded architects across the organization, policy, charters, and performance plans, and then again, promote your results. I will speak to each one of these techniques in the following slides. For process integration, one of the things that we have done is we have partnered with our investment team for the CPIC. We have also partnered with DHS for their acquisition and their EA reviews. We've also partnered internally with our acquisition team because they're putting some new policies and procedures in place, and we want to make sure that we're looking at the architecture before they're looking at their acquisitions. And we've also aligned with the SELC process, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. This is just a list of the EA services that I provide my organization. When I first came on board, these services did not exist, and over the past 4 years, we have worked to develop these services across the organization. We do business modernization planning, which helps business units build out their strategic implementation plans. We also do business process modeling and business process reengineering. We also do performance architecture design. We do that from a program and project perspective in the CIO's office, but we've also partnered with our CFO's office because they're responsible for the performance improvement initiative within all of CBP, and they want to develop enterprise-level performance metrics at the very top of the organization. So they're doing a top-down, and we're doing a bottom-up on the performance architecture. Shared services identification, we do this through our architecture alignment and assessment process. We also review OMB 300s and 53s and help the various programs. We actually have 15 300s within CBP, and so it's pretty important that our performance measures are identified and that any aspects of EA are spoken to within those 300 documents. Architect Before Invest is actually a new service that we have been piloting over the past 6 to 9 months. And whenever someone puts in a resource requirement request or they're developing their program, their ConOps, their ORD, their MENS, their mission needs statement, we actually take those documents and we actually review them prior to going into and asking for investments or for dollars to invest. This has been a very welcomed service. All of our program managers and our project managers have just come back ecstatic because we have offered them information to improve their documents because, of course, they just want to get the money, and that's what we're here to help them do. Okay, architecture alignment and assessment, that's what we do throughout the SELC process. We, at each SELC gate review, we actually do, we call it a AAA, and we work with the various program and project managers from the performance architecture, business workflows, reviewing data management plans, identifying shared services, are they retiring technologies, if so, what's your transition plan, etc. I'm also responsible for enterprise portfolio management. We have the CIO's IT portfolio, which is worth about $2 billion. We have over 350 projects in the tool that we're utilizing, so we also do project and portfolio management reporting. Project transition planning, which I just spoke to during the AAA process, and then we're also an external liaison to DHS, OMB, GAO, and that slide's wrong, and IA. Okay. There are 2 documents that I put out to programs and projects throughout the SELC process. One of them is the Architect Before Invest memo, and that is actually a memo back to the program or project to let them know what our findings are concerning their documents. And of course, these are recommendations on things that they can improve upon, as well as possibly other organizations, other business units that might be working on the same thing. For example, we had one come through recently wanting to use biometrics, and we already have a business unit that's using biometrics, so we recommended that they coordinate and collaborate their efforts. The other memo that I put forward is the AAA, the Architecture Alignment and Assessment Memo, and that is at the various SELC gate reviews, and that's to let them know if they're compliant, conditionally compliant, or non-compliant with regards to the enterprise architecture. We do have executive board sponsorship throughout our organization, and I'm going to talk in just a few minutes about the CBP lines of business. On the left-hand side, we have the Business Collaboration Working Group. It was actually stood up about 15 or 16 months ago when I went into the CIO governance board and explained to them that we needed to have a business collaboration working group because we needed to develop the CBP lines of business and the underlying business architecture so that we could actually talk about our processes and our activities and how best to be more efficient and streamline those processes and those activities. On the right-hand side, we have the Enterprise Architecture Review Board, which is on the technical side, the data, the services, the technology, and the security. And they both provide input to the CIO-CAE Governance Board. This is our EA framework, and this is what was developed by the Business Collaboration Working Group. These are, in fact, CBP's lines of business. We actually worked last fiscal year for 5 months, over 100 working sessions with over 130 SMEs across the organization to actually build out this line of business. In conjunction with that, the underlying business architecture was also developed, and we took it from the function level all the way down to the activity level to also include definitions. Everyone that I work with carries a gun, so to get them to agree on definitions was really interesting. To be honest with you, though, what's really great about this slide is that the Office of Administration, our CFO's office, they liked the lines of business on top, and they said, we can use that framework, and we don't have to recreate a framework. And so what we're going to do is we're going to align the lines of business with the fiscal year Homeland Security Plan. It's a 5-year strategic plan that DHS puts out. And in doing that, on the bottom part of the slide, they aligned the lines of business to our sub-programs, which are actually what I call our budget buckets. I'm not a budget person, so I just call it our budget buckets. And it's what we put our investments in. And it starts to lead the entire enterprise into a true enterprise portfolio management concept. And they actually used this work. We just finished FY13 to FY17 resource allocation planning, and they actually utilized our work to do that planning for the organization. We have embedded architects throughout the organization, not everywhere. Like everyone else, I have resource constraints as well. I really, if I get a phone call, I send people out. They go out, they figure out what the customer needs, they help them out, get them what they need, and then they come back to the organization, and then they go on another assignment. But we do embedded architects. We also have a number of policies, charters, and performance plans within the organization. Again, the work that we're doing has been recognized all the way up at the commissioner's level of CBP, and they have written a number of directives. We have a number of charters, one for the EARB, the Enterprise Architecture Review Board, as well as the Business Collaboration Working Group that we have. Also, I have made sure that my division director and my CIO have EA performance measures in their performance plans. They're both SESs, and so it's kind of nice to know that I'm helping them fulfill the mission and I'm helping them to achieve their performance goals. And then we, of course, want to promote our results. I do have to say my team is not here, and if they were, I'd give them a big round of applause because we've been working for 4 years, and I will say CBP has had an EA program for 11 years, and they hired me 4 years ago to revitalize the program, and for the first time in 11 years, we are being recognized throughout an organization of over 60,000 people. So, again, you have to promote your results because that's how they're going to know that you're there. Thanks.
Great. So that was awesome, Doreen. I think I was so glad to be partnered with Doreen on this discussion because, you know, I've been doing my job for about 7 months, and I see a hero who's been doing it for 4 and made so much progress on promoting and establishing an architecture program. Before I started working at GSA this year, I was at the FAA doing some program management, about a medium-sized program of about like $400 million full life cycle costs. So I kind of came at this job as an opportunity to maybe help my CIO brethren understand the pain we suffer as program offices as we try to use the architecture services. So that was really my goal of taking on this job at GSA. And my colleague Robert's here today. He really kept the program moving well in GSA, and what we try to do is leverage a lot of the work that was done in the past and then maybe take that to another level. So our focus at GSA has been really more upward looking from an architecture perspective. How do we help the executives make better decision making and manage the portfolio more effectively? So I'll kind of show you some of our strategies and our approaches with that. Anyone else only in their job about a year? Or am I the only one? Okay, awesome. There's one person to go meet at the cocktail hour. Great. And do you have to speak? Oh, I thought maybe that was like the hazing ritual, because this is my first GTRA conference too. So, is that how it works? Or anyone know?
Just you.
Just me. Yeah. So I'm just the stupid new guy. Okay. Anyway, so I wanted to give you an overview of where we are with GSA Enterprise Architecture, talk about our purpose and value, talk about some of the critical success factors, practical applications, and lessons learned. And I'm just going to show you some example work that we're doing and kind of talk to you about that and kind of how it applies. So I needed this slide actually because I didn't know what GSA did 7 months ago. So this is one of our first products they asked us to maybe create. Just what does GSA do? And this is one of the first times anyone really put it on one piece of paper. And what I'm showing here on the left are the three major goals that the administrator set out: customer intimacy, innovation, and operational excellence. On the far right is her vision that we provide, what does it say? Sustainable, transparent, and effective government services for the government, right? We're a general services organization. At the top are our major stakeholders and customers, the agencies, citizens, the industry, as well as the White House. And in the middle, we identified roughly 7 business capabilities that we wanted to achieve in GSA. Smart and flexible workspaces, one-stop acquisition services, just-in-time supply delivery, innovative government-wide platforms, being this first-in-class, providing shared services, in particular around HR and finance, and then innovative and secure IT services, and lastly, enabling knowledge and data-driven decision-making within our own organization. So we kind of set up these 7 capabilities and said, well, this is what we think GSA is. And I was amazed at how this actually picture kind of made the rounds at GSA and people really resonated to this concept. And so actually what you'll see throughout the rest of the slides is we've used these 7 capabilities to really drive enterprise architecture and drive our portfolio alignment in GSA. Maybe the last thing I'll say about this slide is at the very bottom we started to introduce the concept of 4 layers of sort of an IT enterprise services, going all the way from at the lowest level a GSA Anywhere concept of being able to use any device to access GSA, all the way up to sort of cloud and smart enterprise services. So I'll show you a little bit about that later. So this is our foundational slide that we're trying to use to communicate EA's value and to start to organize GSA's portfolio. So I think more or less we have 4 main objectives, or I guess focus areas. One is to focus on value. The second is to make sure EA adapts to fit the business, so not the other way around. Communication is key, as Doreen mentioned. And then I think our last one is trying to facilitate difficult conversations. Anyone else try to do that with EA? Because that's really hard. Yeah, I know Mary does. So that's kind of what we see as our 4 major success factors and areas of work. Why GSA Enterprise Architecture? Our purpose is to facilitate GSA's modernization by describing and improving the way we combine our businesses with our information and our technology. And we basically identified a value proposition that has a couple elements to it, or a few elements. We want to demonstrate GSA's ability to deliver on its goals. And so that's about tying together business needs, information, and technology. We want to simplify our OMB mandates, right? Make it easy for people to justify to the OMB what we're doing and why. We want to enhance information sharing across GSA, and then also streamline service delivery. And then from a technology perspective, it's all about improving the quality of our solutions, right? It's about improving interoperability and agility, and about making sure our solutions are future-focused, not maybe backwards-focused. And our philosophy is really it's a team activity. We're here to facilitate the architecture and the alignment of the portfolio, not to do it for them or not to try to dictate it. So that's kind of our concept and our values on the EA team. Those okay? Anyone paying attention still?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. This is our framework for adapting to business needs. We basically identified a high-level set of activities we want to do in architecture that really fit between strategic plans at the top, that sort of horizontal bar at the top, and the implementations and programs that are happening at the bottom. And we identified three major things. One is the strategic business capabilities I talked about before, those 7 kind of core components of GSA. The middle part was just really making sure we could describe our business and information systems at the level that they wanted to talk about it at. So right now we're more conceptual in GSA on these issues. And the third thing, which we're still working on, is how do we get there? What's the transition and sequencing plan we want to start showing people as we move forward and start to measure progress. So that's really the 3 elements of architecture from our perspective. So this is the first one. I'm just going to show one example of each, where we took the strategic goals from the administration, the vision, and developed this sort of 7 strategic capabilities, which try to describe sort of the future-looking view of where GSA will be heading. And as I said, these have been gotten a lot of traction. You can see we identified it as 5 major services that we provide to customers and 2 enablers that are sort of internal enablers to deliver that. The top enabler, knowledge and data, is about the human, improving the human capital in GSA, and the bottom one is about improving our IT infrastructure. This is just an example of one of the once you go from the conceptual view, maybe looking at a particular capability area. This is just one example. A nice picture that I like pictures. Just showing sort of what might that future enterprise IT services consist of. And this shows the 4 layers I talked about earlier. Sort of a bottom layer, we call it GSA Anywhere, where you want to be able to access your infrastructure, your information technology using any device, securely and with single sign-on. In the middle, we talk about a GSA cloud concept of making sure everything's virtualized and consolidated, and we have you can access all your assets from whatever device you're doing. GSA Commons to us was about that service-oriented architecture we all love and want to get to, right? Information flows and connection between systems. And then the smart enterprise is just our concept of maybe higher level services that IT can provide to the rest of the business. So part of our goal here was to help the CIO in our organization really look at how can I move beyond the nuts and bolts infrastructure I'm providing today and start to provide higher level value for the agency. So this was a great concept that she could use to talk to the administrator and others in the organization. The last piece I'll talk only shortly on is because we haven't really done it yet. Is road mapping. So how do you start to sequence the programs and activities that are occurring in your organization and really start to show when you're going to deliver things, what the dependencies are, and start to manage the risks across the portfolio. Any questions? Maybe I guess we'll ask questions later. My third component or tier of our strategy has been about communications. Our goal is to communicate and engage the community in enterprise thinking, and we spend a lot of time focusing on audience, purpose, and message. What are we trying to accomplish with each communication that we do? So I was glad to see Doreen's service catalog. We have a very similar service catalog and brochure that focuses on 4 major core services. We've just started our newsletter, which is actually called Enterprise Pulse. Now we changed the name, not Enterprise Connect. And our first issue is coming out in May with a great article by me, actually. What can I say? Well, they only gave me 200 words, so it's not that great. And then the last piece is workshops and training. We did a nice workshop in January where we talked about these 7 capabilities and sort of drummed up some support behind them. And I think we're going to try another workshop in July where we talk about that 4-layer IT strategy I showed you and try to explain to people what that is and how that might affect their own portfolios in the future. Facilitating difficult conversations. This is a difficult topic, actually. You have these 7 capabilities. How do you start to move the business towards that? And that's really what our difficult conversations have been about, is helping the business understand if their programs are really aligned. And so we've been actually started this work about I guess in March, where we briefed the administrator and her executives on a concept for taking these 7 capabilities and moving them to reality. We call that a 4-week sprint. I think, Doreen, it sounded like your 5-month thing was very similar. You sort of did a 5-month look at the lines of business. And I think we're trying to do sort of 7 4-week looks at the business and try to line up the portfolio against that. We just started our first one. Actually, we just about finished our first one, so I'll let you know in about a week whether we survive it. It's been really exciting to do that with the rest of the agency. So we'll see. And it's very important to do. As we all know from the tightening budget issues, this is some of the information from the recent GAO report about things that should really drive our need to do these tough conversations with the enterprise, and where I think enterprise architects have all the tools and the knowledge to provide really a fact-based discussion. And this is just an example of one of the results that came out of our sprint activity, where we looked at our shared service capabilities in GSA, and in particular this one is around human resources. And we were able to help the organization understand, why do they have, tens of systems doing HR, and why do we have shadow support systems? And then they actually developed this 3 set of initiatives that they thought were important to start judging them on as we move towards the future. And, one was centralizing routine HR processes, and they identified what those are. And the second one was to start to unify into a single system, because it's really hard to do HR if you have multiple systems all over the place. And their last issue is they wanted a portfolio management concept where they could manage this portfolio as an HR team across the lines of business. So, this was, us facilitating the conversation, but then coming up with the right answer. So I was really, really happy with that. So my lessons learned and my takeaways for you folks is just that you need to demonstrate an understanding of the business if you're going to do architecture. Focus on EA value and services, not on EA products and tools. Try to stay pretty agile so you don't lose their attention. So we tried the 4-week thing, and it's been working okay. Facilitate stewardship of the agency vision. Make sure that, what I mean by that is keep a line of sight between the architecture and the agency's vision. Help the business see that you're not trying to dictate to them, you're just trying to help them stay aligned and focused. And our last issue is just communications, and it's all about networking and building that cross-organizational ownership and commitment around a single vision and a single way to move forward. So I think at that point, that's all I wanted to tell you about my early work at GSA, and I hope I'll be back here next year to tell you if we survived. So I think we wanted to ask if you had any questions about Doreen or...
Yeah, this is designed to be kind of an interactive session. We wanted to give the two of them...
I'll sit down.
No, you can stand up if you want. But we want to give them a chance to discuss some of their critical success factors in the work they're doing, and see if you all had any comments on the work that you're doing, make any observations based on what your EA shop is doing in your organization, and go from there. So do we have any comments or questions or concerns even?
Oh, it was so obvious.
Yeah. Now I get to play Oprah, now that she's out of a job.
Hi, great presentation, thank you. I was just curious, I know the administration has an initiative now to reorganize government to be more innovative, and I was curious how the enterprise architects have been engaged in that process.
Mary, do you want to answer that, or should I? Well, I mean, I think the IT reform plan, from my perspective, is a centerpiece to a lot of our work in the EA programs. So, I think a lot of our work is trying to educate the rest of our lines of business about the impacts of that, trying to take the lessons. There's some really good low-hanging fruit that's identified by Vivek and others to sort of that we can use to, I guess, incentivize some changes in government about consolidation and shared services and things like that. And both Mary and I are also on a committee with Scott Bernard, who's leading up the shared services portion of the IT reform, to look at how do we start to incentivize shared services across the federal government. And I think we're just in the early stages, would you say? So I think we're still trying to figure out what that means. So.
Is this on?
You want this?
Well, also, if you look at the GAO report from March of 2011, this year, which talks about duplication in the federal government, one of the things that it really hits on very strongly is that enterprise architecture can be the pivoting tool in that, and can play a major role in looking at organizations. For example, I talked about building out the CBP lines of business. There's an underlying business architecture for each one of those lines of business, from the function all the way down. If you really want to talk about streamlining, you really have to have your business architecture in place to be able to say that group is duplicating what that group is doing, or we can streamline this process by reorganizing our organization, whether it's CBP, a number of DHS components, or even Commerce, State Department of Agriculture. Those are organizations that we work with. So I think the GAO report from March It's a great report, but I think the heart of it is the business architecture of each organization. That's what you really have to analyze, and you have to do that through EA.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on this lady's point about try to re-engineering IT within the federal government. If we take a look at private industry, we see all the productivity that's in there. I work for ICE, and our last all hands, they actually had a video indicating the tremendous amount of effort and time that the government puts in this effort, and the little resources that we basically get out of it. It's so much different from what private industry is doing. Private industry talks about products. We talk about processes. Private industry defines a process or a service and then optimizes the processes and services behind that, as opposed to the federal government, which I believe seems to have these static processes, and they try to shove everything in these processes, and of course they just churn and churn and churn. So, I mean, there is a really big difference. Things like Facebook and Google and Apple and those things have developed technologies that change the way we communicate across the board. It affects hundreds of millions of people worldwide, and the federal government basically is spending a tremendous amount of money and effort, and what are we getting out of it in terms of as compared to the private sector? How do we fix that? Or isn't it a problem at all?
Well, I'm not going to solve the world's problems today, but I will tell you from CBP's perspective, CBP went through a merger about 8 years ago when Homeland Security was formed. And CBP was built from like 3 different components that already existed within the federal government. And you just kind of supported what I just said about the GAO report from March of this year, because of the simple fact that in having the business owners take ownership of their business and their architecture and having those difficult discussions with the business owners about their processes. I have 5 business units that support border security, okay? It's not just Border Patrol. It's Border Patrol, Field Operations, Air and Marine, OIOC, and IA. And I have to provide a collaborative environment for them to have very serious discussions. It's their business. And I have to get them to understand that only they can fix the business, they can streamline the processes, and those business needs can then drive common conversations around the true IT requirements that we have that then lead us to a time of retiring legacy systems, because we had one conversation around border security and everybody involved talked about their IT requirements, which then allowed us to develop one system or maybe 2 systems that supported all of that rather than having 15, 20 systems, etc. And, oh, by the way, no information sharing going on whatsoever. Okay, so I hear what you're saying and I do agree with you, but you have to start very simply, and that is by getting the business owners to accept that they do own the business, and therefore we need their active engagement in looking at the various processes and trying to streamline them, and also trying to retire. They got it. When I sat down and I talked to them and said, we can no longer continue to pay hundreds of millions of dollars for O&M on legacy systems because we don't have the money, and we need to have some very common conversations here. They got it. And they're the ones that stepped up and they put forth the resources to help us build out the architecture. And they went, whoa, we all kind of do the same thing in different locations for different areas. But yeah, and so they have to have that common conversation. Again, they went through a merger and they have not had these conversations before. These conversations should have occurred 8 years ago when they first were created. They've never had them, but they're starting to have them now, and they do get it. But they have to own the problem because they have to own the solution that comes out of it.
I just want to say she has a lot of wisdom. I think that's why I liked working with Doreen, because I think we had exactly the same view on this stuff. I think everything she said would apply to GSA or any other place. And I think you see the examples we showed, they're very, very similar in our concepts. So difficult conversations, bringing the business in to have those discussions.
I'm over here. First, I wanted to, kind of reward you for having the GSA Anywhere kind of process there that I saw on your slide, which recognizes that there's trends in IT that a lot of our legacy systems aren't touching, the mobility aspect of what's going on out there. How do your organizations, whether or not it's you or not, bring in industry or watch trends that are going to change the way you do business? So I know you're focused on values and processes, yet there are, just as the gentleman said over there, there are technologies that instantly change the way you can do business. And since the IT, change is rapid, although acquisition is not, how do you do that? How do you look for innovation? How do you make sure, good small companies that have great ideas can help you?
Yeah, I think I have a bad answer because we have a government Office of Citizen Service. What's it called? OCSIT. I'm looking for John. How do you?
Citizen Services and Innovative Technology.
That's it. Yeah, we have that great office in GSA that makes sure we're watching what's happening in the real world. So maybe I'm biased. I don't really have a good answer for you, other than they're doing a great job of keeping us informed on what the trends are. So, and GSA in general, because of our administrator, she says we're supposed to innovate. So she really wants to put us on the front edge. So maybe it came from the top, I guess.
We actually partner with the CTO's office. My team partners with the CTO's office, and we also have an iLab within the CIO's office, and they're doing a lot of the testing of the new technologies that are coming forward. But again, like you said, from our perspective, it's security, but it's also acquisition. So that's not a very fast-moving process in of itself.
Yeah, but do your organizations have routine industry days so that word is out there?
We actually just started having industry days this year, mainly because the acquisition timeline is, the pipeline is really long from recompeting contracts. And so it was two things. One, to let industry know that this is what's coming, this is what we have going on over the next couple of years. But it was also kind of a way to force the procurement card, because that pipeline is just so, it's backed up, it's backlogged.
In terms of prescriptive enterprise architecture, what is the balance between being prescriptive and actually making people comply at a level that they can actually talk to each other versus the flexibility that people need to innovate? For instance, as we know, there's a huge amount of stuff going on in the mobility area, and if you're too prescriptive in that, you might miss out on some of the things that we've, the Facebook, well, that's dated, but whatever. And then the next question would be, is this a two-part question, is where is your organizations in that?
Don't you think IT is really helping us solve this problem? I mean, I don't know, Facebook, and what else is connected to Facebook these days? I don't know, you've seen the Google mashups and all that stuff, so they already know how to solve a lot of the interoperability issues when you move to new technologies. So I think it's a matter of leveraging a lot of that from my perspective. And also having good foundation on your data architecture and your services architecture strategy, so that you can allow your high-level services and your infrastructure to adjust and evolve while you have that core information and service level that's sort of constant and consistent.
I don't think any of us argue that it's a technology issue. What generally is the government processes are so slow to change that. So you're stuck to your wires and your old desktops and all that other stuff. Yet the individual really wants to work on his iPad or his, not on that stuff. It takes years to.
I would say it's even beyond that. Sometimes the government just doesn't change. We keep taking and trying to jam a square peg into a round hole around the procurement and finance channels. Those are not changing.
Right.
And that's more of a function, I believe, of OMB and the Hill to get some of that stuff changed and technologies to be integrated into the government process.
I concur.
Hi, I'm from the Weather Service, which is an organization which I guess is about 3 tiers down from OMB. And like everybody else, we're under pressure to reduce our budget spent on IT, which means we're going through, looking at the various programs, finding the common elements, and then have to deal with the culture of how things get done. My organization is basically split in two camps, the scientists and the IT people. And the scientists think they could do the IT better than the IT people. And the IT people can't do weather. But on the serious note, when you look at the common elements that we could pull together from different programs within the Weather Service, these are the same elements that apply at the next higher level, NOAA, and the same elements that then apply at the department level, Commerce, and apply straight across the government to most agencies. Okay, we're more data intensive, but still we have the same basic functions. What I personally feel would be very, very useful is if an agency such as GSA, and I don't claim that I understand your mission well at all, go to the forefront and establish FSMA-certified clouds and other technologies that's out there. It would make life a lot easier if I approach one of our business owners and say, tell you what, these new functions that you're trying to put in, instead of putting in your own server to do that, why don't you just go to this website and subscribe to these services? Is there any plans to, to basically get ahead so the rest of us could follow?
I think a lot of that's happening now. Do you know anything? I know I've got someone from ITS here. Do you want to say anything? Or? Yeah.
Well, so this is my view. We make a lot of we make a lot of mistakes just for the sake of time. I'll give you, for instance, we just put out the BPAs for cloud. Those are very specific. So I was at Expo last week, and there was a vendor there that came up with a new solution. And I'm listening, and basically the BPAs that were put out are too specific to accommodate that vendor. Now, the BPAs were put out basically for time to try to get something out there quick to accommodate the cloud solution. Would a GWAC have been better to allow the spread basically to have more vendors involved and also more solutions? That would have taken more time. So this is a trade-off, getting the BPAs out now or waiting, let's say, a year to get a GWAC in place so that more of the requirements are filled. Who's going to make that decision? A lot of this is driven by the needs of the moment and political pressures, however you want to identify them, push some of this, and it's not necessarily the right solution.
I think we need to be careful with the cloud too, because you can take your old processes and throw them in the cloud, and they're still your same old processes. So you kind of have to realize it's more than just where your IT sits. So,
First, I just wanted to say I'm actually strongly encouraged this week because I'm bidding on my first actually giving input on my first GSA offering through Better Buy.
Oh,
I don't know
nice.
if you're familiar with Better Buy. But I was really encouraged by that little portal that I got to click on, and it actually included something called Wiki, which everybody in here probably looks at as bad, but let me tell you, from a collaboration perspective and sort of providing input perspective, it's a very, very effective and well-used tool. Wiki Encyclopedia is where everybody's probably more common with it. So I was really encouraged by that for GSA.
Which technology is that one? Do you know?
Pardon me?
Do you know which technology is underlying that Better Buy?
Don't. I mean, I think it's a wiki, actually a wiki base. But.
Okay. There's lots of wikis, yeah.
Yeah, so
I think it's really cool too. The only problem is GSA is like 6 or 7 of these same things.
They do, and they're piloting a number of these, and that one, just for this one little solicitation,
cool.
actually about mobility, I was like, wow, that's really cool. I was really excited. So, but it did speak to a couple of things that industry is going to have a little bit of a problem with, like, do we want to share our best secrets and ideas in an open forum with all of our competitors? Got news for you, we're probably not going to want to do that. So if you want to see my stuff, you got to come to my little room. Anyway, but and I'll share openly with anybody from government.
Let's see, is that tomorrow at 10? When am I?
I don't mean my bedroom, by the way. I mean our boardroom. Come on, man. Parm's back here going, don't invite them up to your room. All right, so, but anyway, my question, though, was really, actually, if you could just answer this. You said you've got hundreds of millions of dollars to support legacy systems. And so far as I can tell, you're one of the few people up here that I've spoken to so far today that actually kind of had a handle on what their systems operationally might be costing them.
No. I said we lost hundreds of millions of dollars this fiscal year and in coming fiscal years.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I thought what you had said was...
We have lost money, therefore it makes it more painful to continue to do O&M on those legacy systems.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. That was exactly what I was going to ask about, because one of the things that we try to do is we're trying to always run against ROI models. We'll ask a CIO, well, how much are you spending today on this? Well, I don't know. Well, can you find out? Not really. Shouldn't you know? Probably. I mean, it's a really hard problem, and I'm not being dismissive of that. It's hard for us in our organization. I mean, I get that. It's hard, but I'm just curious whether you guys can speak to whether efforts are being made to truly try to collect what the current costs are on certain systems, legacy systems, if you will, that exist today, that maybe you can sunset, and how do you get to that number?
So I can tell you, when I talked about those 7 capabilities, and part of the reason our administrator was so excited is we told her we would give her the true costs, which we are. So part of the work is to, at least at the level we think we can, give them a sense on, here's the number of systems, here's the total cost, here's what's happening in these areas. And so I think you're right, people want to start knowing that stuff. And that's part of, I think, some of the facts the architecture teams can start to bring to bear. It's one piece, right? It's not the whole thing. Cost is one component.
And if you'll go back to the LOB slide, the CBP lines of business slide that have the budget buckets on the bottom, we're not, that's what I call it, sorry, I'm not a budget person. We're not there today, but they are heading in that direction. I know that they are setting up a capital investment planning group through, it's senior executives, and they're having to have, understand this is an organization under Department of Homeland Security who, in the past 4 or 5 years, they've had money thrown at them, okay? But it's not just through the budget process, it's also through legislation, because every time Congress passes, a new bill or something and wants to do something on the border, well, they sometimes give us money, sometimes they don't give us money, but we have to make it happen by a certain date, okay? They are now having to have those very painful conversations with one another. There is no more getting money thrown at you because that's the way it's been for the past 4 or 5 years. It's definitely a change. And they're having good conversations. We hope to get to what you speak to so that they can have even better financial discussions about what we're doing and what we're continuing to operate and maintain in the organization.
This question's for Doreen mostly. You talked about the concept of having embedded EA within your organization. I have a few questions about it. I'll just roll them all out and then you can get one answer probably. Are the business owners actually calling you to request EA support, which would be great if they're saying, yeah, I need more EA. And I'm assuming you have a certain level of resources, and how do you go about prioritizing who gets those personalized service out at the BO level? And how deep are they going? Are they doing business process modeling? Are they doing solution architecture? And how deep do you go when you get those services?
Okay, so I'm going to try to, yes, we do get calls from the business units and also from program offices to come in and provide them EA services. Again, back to a question or statement earlier about how do you move away from compliance. When I joined CBP 4 years ago, I totally redirected my team away from compliance. Yes, we know ultimately that we want folks to comply. We want their projects and their programs to comply with the architecture and with the 2B technical architecture. Excuse me. Data center migration, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't use that word. We do have repeat business coming in. What was your other question? I'm sorry.
How do you prioritize? You've got limited resources. You've got multiple people.
How do I prioritize? I kind of am at an advantage here, and if my contractor were here, he'd probably smack me, but I have a cost plus fixed fee contract. And so being that it's a cost plus fixed fee contract, and I'll just give you an example, if the man hours is 160 man hours per person per month, whatever they work above that, I don't pay for. And I'm a closet taskmaster. We are doing some segment, we are supporting DHS as a matter of fact. In building out the CBP business architecture, DHS initiated building out the DHS HR segment, and so we were able to promote up what we did. We are currently within the organization, we are doing a geospatial deep dive, which includes all of our business owners, because CBP is changing the way it's doing business. We have a couple pilots going on across the U.S. right now with the Joint Operations Centers, and they're finding it to be very, very successful, but we're also finding that those folks really need geospatial, and so we are bringing them all together. It's a subgroup of our business collaboration working group, and so we're building out that segment. We do know that the DHS Geospatial Office is doing some stuff right now with FEMA. They're FEMA focused for disaster recovery. We do support FEMA during disaster recovery. Our Air and Marine group, as well as our field officers, support FEMA during disaster recovery. But we're going ahead and building out that geospatial segment for CBP because we do have a need, a big business need to change the way we're doing business. In order to do that, we find that the information, it has to be shared across the organization. You have to be able to overlay the map so they can see it all in one common operating picture and not 20 different documents.
Do we have any other questions? All right, one more.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to some of the comments about how can government be more flexible and how do we achieve better EA over time and how we accommodate people's needs. One of the facts that everyone working in the government knows, and probably most everyone in the room knows, we are inflexible because of the way the budget process works. Right now our budget is essentially locked until October of next year. And we're now, this month, working on the budget for 2013. With all the cuts, none of those budget items, there's no money, I'm guessing, in virtually anyone's pockets that is designed for innovation and coming up with something new and effective. You're getting steady state maintenance or less. And I don't know of anybody who can streamline a process, can consolidate systems into a new effort without having a bubble up front that allows them to do their job and streamline so that outlying years are actually reduced. And that's one of the big issues with turning the ship around that makes government appear so inefficient. And I don't know if you have any ideas on how we may be able to address that, or suggestions on, or comments on how you have accomplished that, but I'll drop that in your lap.
So, I mean, I'll say a few things about it. I think that to say that there's no flexibility in our budgets is probably not completely true. I mean, you know, as part of our deep dives, you see these steady state programs that turn out 66% of their money is actually being used for new development work. So there's probably, I imagine all of us, if we looked at our organizations, we could find similar stories of, what do you want to call it? Just, there's good work going on, but there was no enterprise visibility, and so there's never any enterprise decision making. So it's a challenge for, I think that's where EA can help provide the leadership some information about what's really happening so they can make the decisions of if they're happy with, those sort of incremental advancements or whether they'd like to take that resources and redirect it in maybe a more strategic way. That's one example, I think. It's not specific and concrete, but it's kind of the concept that we're seeing as we look at our different lines of business and kind of what's really happening in them. So, and I think our lines of business are starting to realize, that they don't really want to do these non-core services anymore, like maybe they wanted to in the past. So they're ready to start shedding those sort of administrative functions, and that allows you to create or identify, again, resources that could maybe be redirected. Those are some things that we're thinking about.
I'm not going to touch that one.
Oh, is that? Was I non-PC? Great.
All right. I hate to cut off such a great Q&A, but we're out of time. So thank you all very much.